Welcome to WDI Germany representative to give an update from Germany 2025. So over to you.
Hello all. Here's a small update from Germany on a certain aspect of the self-ID law, the so-called Self-Determination Act. So as many have heard, Germany has self-ID since November 2024. There was also some international protests concerning this, organized starting from Germany, from German women, and then women joined internationally. And now we have a new government, and now there's some changes being done, and I wanted to show you something of this ongoings. But what you see as an introductory picture is like our status quo, like it was with the old government before the election 2025. So you see here actually a meme at the demonstration for women's rights, for women's sex-based rights in Kassel. And what you see in the picture on the left is Lisa Paus. She is our now former Federal Minister for Family Affairs. And when she was asked during the conference about women's safety, or about women feeling unsafe with men in women's spaces, she said, quote, trans women are women, and that's why I don't see any need for further discussion. So that's the stance of the former government. And on the right, of course, is Karen White, who is a rapist who raped women in a women's prison. And but now we have a new government. So what is going on? You see here, the winners are the ones here depicted as gray and dark blue. These are CDU and CSU. These are Christian Democrats. And they came out as victims from the last election. They got the most votes, and but they went into a coalition with the SPD, who kind of colossally lost. So you see on the right difference to the last election. The SPD is minus 86. And the CDU gained a bit with plus 12. The CSU lost a bit. CDU and CSU are sister parties, so we always look at them together. They're called the union, so they're like belonging together. Who really colossally won for themselves, they increased the votes for the AfD, but this is a right-wing party. But it's not part of the government. The government consists now of the union, the CDU, CSU, and the SPD. And the SPD, they were in the former government. They were among they were totally three parties in the last government, a coalition of three parties. And among them were the SPD, and they brought us the Self-ID Act. And we have to ironically thank them for this. Actually not. And so what is going on now? Because there were some hopes from our side, from the women's rights campaigners, and also for those who are worried about children. These are also in one group, mainly women's rights campaigners. There were hopes that the CDU, CSU might try to kind of stop this Self-ID Act even before it happened, that they will maybe, there were discussions among women's rights campaigners, what can we do, what can they do, can they go to the Constitutional Court and say it's unconstitutional? Nothing happened. But there was still something in the Self-ID law that the CDU, CSU could not digest, and they also wanted some certain changes. So there were some debates, and they came to a certain agreement in their coalition contract, to some compromise. So what we are getting is Self-ID light from them, and not let's abolish the Self-ID and let's abolish what there was before. There was actually, so this is not our first law that allows the falsification of sex and penalizes free speech. Like you cannot say down to the man as a man. There's no free speech like that here. There's compelled speech. We also had that with the previous law, with the Transsexuellen Gesetz. It was a very old law. It's since the 80s even. And Yes, so it's nothing new in Germany. The difference is that the self-ID law now is very kind of liberal. You don't need anything to change your sex marker. You can wake up tomorrow and say, I will go to the authorities and I will be the adult sex. If you want to learn more about this, later I will show you some videos you could look up if you want to hear more details, because I do not focus now on all the details of this law. So that's the coalition contract between the Christian Democrats and the Social Democratic Party. And what does it say? It's quite contradictory. So what we notice here, they're using ideological language. So they're saying things like, we continue to advocate for the protection of queer life from discrimination. Queer life, in German it's queeres Leben. So they're using nonsensical ideological speech for things and groups which do not exist. In the next sentence, they already go and say, it must be a given that people shouldn't be discriminated against on basis of their sexual orientation. So now it's just sexual orientation, but what is queer then? So they have apparently no plan what is which. So they're conflating a good cause, like the protection from discrimination based on sexual orientation, with complete nonsense, which is queer and which is completely devoid of meaning, and could include any heterosexual who wants to be a bit special and call themselves a different sex or invented whatever identity. And also they say in this point called sexual diversity, again, this sounds like there are thousands of ways of reproduction, not only male or female for humans. So it's a complete nonsense. So they say here, they want to raise awareness. They have to raise awareness and solidarity and togetherness. So all sorts of kumbaya. This sounds like they want to spread how to say, maybe propaganda, to raise awareness and strengthen solidarity. In other words, we have to accept what they think is queer life, quote unquote queer life, that needs to be protected, which of course includes men who violate our boundaries. And the next point is about the law specifically. Now it's getting interesting for us because they want to have some changes there. They want to make an evaluation and to make some changes to this law. But they still preface it with, of course, we are all for the trans and so on, and they mix in the intersex, which has nothing to do with it, because, of course, people with DSDS are not an invented identity. This is a physical, real issue, and there's still only male and female. There's no third or fifth or thousand sex. And but they're conflating everything, and they're prefacing it. Yes, we want to change something, but we are still for this people, for these groups of people. And but they also want to look which impact does this law have on children and young people, and when can a sex change happen. So it means the sex registration, not the physical quote unquote sex change. And protection of women. So that was the thing. I think this is coming definitely from the CDU. The other parties would have never written this. That's at least my assumption. But we see here from that what we read before, it's completely nonsensical. So protection of children, protection of women is not possible if you accept that there's an invented group that want to take away the rights from women and children and want to endanger them. So this is not, how to call it, you cannot write this on the same page. So it's either you allow men to take away women's rights in spaces or not. You allow the chemical castration of children and propaganda telling them they're in the wrong body if they do not conform to sexist stereotypes or not. But this is what still even the quote-unquote right-wing parties or the conservative parties do not quite understand. They still conflate it with homosexuality, like, this is a small group, this is not everyone is affected, they should do their thing. Actually not, because this affects all our rights, and it removes child protection completely. And just to clarify, this current state of this law, the self-ID law, does not include kind of, how to call it, regulations for operations on minors or even anybody. But the previous versions, which kind of lost, this is a new version, they indeed included operations on minors against the will of the parents. So a family court could have said, that it's in the interest of the child to castrate the child. And then the parents couldn't do anything. And that was in the previous draft of this self-ID law. So what we got in the end was already the light version. I think maybe it got too much criticism, probably, and or they didn't get too much support for this, and it got kicked out. But this is just my presumptions. In any case, in the current state of this law, there is no passage about operations on anyone, but it's still, of course, putting children on the way to these sorts of things by teaching them that sex change is possible, because there's a law that allows legal sex change. And there have been a law like that for a long time, just in a different version. Okay, to getting back to this text. So now we're getting to the main point after this excursus of what was before. There is there's an issue with, of course, with tracing the identity, and whoever has a functioning brain could have recognized this from miles away. So they are addressing this in the changes. Just here to remind you, you can look up whatever you need about the self-ID law, explained much better than I did, on these videos. And there are several other great women talking from Germany, talking on matters of self-ID or other matters on the VDL international channel, YouTube channel. Please check them out. So there is a draft bill now that is apparently not widely talked over, but of course trans activists are very angry about this. So what is it about? It's about the transmission of personal data to all relevant authorities, and when someone changes their civil status, so name and sex and so on. And before the final adoption of the Self-ID Act or Self-Determination Act in August 23, the Federal Ministry of the Interior expressed concerns that a change in civil status will give criminals the opportunity to evade persecution. Surprise. The proposed solution to this problem at the time was to forward relevant personal data to all relevant authorities, such as the Federal Criminal Office, others, Office for the Protection of the Constitution, Refugee Office, and so on. So all these authorities actually always need to know who is who. And this idea ultimately failed to make it into the new law, which entered into force in November 24. Now, as announced in the coalition agreement, the Federal Ministry of the Interior is planning another adjustment, which is scheduled to take effect in 26. So if they agree upon this. So what does it say, this draft? It says, sex registration and name changes under the Self-Determination Act must be transmitted to all authorities and other public bodies that are permitted to receive data on first names and sex information within the framework of existing legal regulations, and for which the change in this data is a trigger for the data transmission. This also applies to data retrieval from the registers. The interesting point is that this, according to this draft, the fine of up to 10,000 euros for using, for disclosing or like using someone's former name does not apply. because there's exemption for this official information systems from this fine, so disclosure, no? And they can see the original sex marker entry, the original name before the change, and also when the change has occurred. And this draft says the qualitative benefit of the change is that persons who have changed their sex entry and their first names can still be identified in various official registers and official information systems, and their identity can be traced. Wow. So this all, of course, will not be necessary if we wouldn't allow people to falsify documents. And this, of course, the falsification is unending from not only the passport, but they can also apply to falsify like driver's license or some sort of, how to call it, diploma or whatever. Of course, the birth certificate and so on. So even if we didn't have such laws since the 80s already, and now worse with the 24 law, this all will not be necessary. But we have it, so they have to make adjustments to trace people's identities. Of course, the trans activists and allies, quote-unquote allies, are not happy about this. For example, Mike Brückner, who is a queer policy spokesperson for the parliamentary group of the party Die Linke. So this is a opposition party. The Die Linke means the left, so they're like even more on the left. And they are all for this Self-ID Act and everything that goes with this ideology. So he says it is to be feared that in connection with the Self-Determination Act, the intention is to resort to documentation practices reminiscent of so-called pink lists and thus of the darkest times in German history. This involves highly sensitive personal data. Its additional storage in a separate data sheet is neither necessary nor justified. An unnecessary instrument is being created here that invites abuse, and that is extremely dangerous. De facto, the door is being opened to data abuse, and trans people rightly fear unforeseeable consequences. The criminalization of trans lives is a central component of the authoritarian restructuring of the state, and it comes in seemingly mundane steps, such as the addition to the civil register. So he's painting a big picture here. What is he talking about? So he's even putting this in a bigger setting. So it's not just the civil register. This is an attack on trans lives. So this is like showing that the state becomes authoritarian. I will say that the state becomes more authoritarian. I agree with that, but through other means, like limiting the freedom of speech and introducing compelled speech. For example, if you say someone's former name, if you disclose the former name, then you can get a fine. Or like refer to someone of their real sex, then you can get a fine. You can maybe go to prison, who knows. In any case, this is a police and court method then. So that's authoritarian, for sure. But the authorities knowing your actual sex, it's not authoritarian to me. This is normal. This was normal 5 minutes ago in the history of the world. And what is he talking about naming pink lists? So pink lists were lists used for the police, and they were about homosexuals. So the homosexuality was a crime in the past, and police collected names of these people, which is of course very bad. And that's the image he's evoking. So he's reminding us of the dark times in Germany when the police did these terrible things and so on. But actually, the homosexuals didn't falsify any data, and the putting them on lists was really unjustified. For obvious reasons, they were just people living their lives. No? But here, this becomes unnecessarily necessary, since the law allows the change of identity every year. And for obvious reasons, this is very questionable and problematic. And his criticism is highly, I would say, my opinion, manipulative, because he paints these matters with the same brush, and they're totally not the same brush. This has nothing to do with wanting to persecute people. This is the state collecting data. And of course, the state is to blame here, because it allows this sort of stupid laws and to live on through the ages, but it's not persecution. Anyway, so someone else also were unhappy. So this is an individual called Penelope Alva Frank of quote unquote queer feminist movement, Queer Many. And he says, this means we will remain marked forever at every authority, at every query, whether we want it or not. Of course, the solution to this is not to falsify the personal data. Just remain telling the truth. Just tell the truth on the paper. The law should not allow such things as falsifying the documents. Okay, so this individual, he apparently made a petition, and it's going really well. You can see here in the upper corner, 22,000. They are nearly getting it there. And what does it say? So no special register for trans people. So if you see there's a little star after trans. So this means including all genders. So I mean gender in the meaning of gender, no? Or how they use the word gender. They say this is like male, female, whatever, invented gender, non-binary, non-binary, whatever. From the long list, there are like already over hundreds. So this is what the trans stands for, the trans star stands for. And they can also put it, and they often put it on the word women or woman to identify, to say, actually, this also include men. So whenever you see this little star, it might be this meaning. And this language which is being used here is also very evoking of the dark times. It says, never again lists against minorities. So I interpreted personally that, like the other example, they make it look like unjustifiably the state or the government makes lists on people. You too will go on the list, like in the joke. And as if this is unjustifiable. And also this never again, I don't know if this is intended or not, so this is, again, bear with me, this is my personal opinion. The never again slogan is often used here in Germany in concerns to the Nazi crimes, concerning Holocaust. So if you see never again, at least I associate it very much with the persecution of the Jewish people in Germany. And they also use this never again in regards to what the Nazis did to them, or like generally about the Holocaust and persecution of minorities. So I get the image, in my personal opinion, that this idea is being brought to light here. And again, this is not justifiable, of course. And I dare you to look up this person's Instagram. I dare you, but don't do it at work. I just wanted to see what sort of organization or who that is, who was interviewed, and I regretted it. Because just everyone said before and now and keep saying it, this law is used in many different ways, and of course, even not all of them are men with special fields, but here you can use it to obscure criminal records. And if you're interested, you can look up on this Redux article from February 25 of this year and get this information how this law is used now. It is indeed very easy. You just need to say you are different sex. So why this picture? In the beginning, I was talking that the government has changed. And also we hear a lot around the world, like, oh, the gender ideology is having problems. There's a backlash. Of course, there's also bad parts of the backlash, like it hits also the lesbian and gays. But the general gender ideology is going back, is retreating a bit, and the more conservative parties are gaining momentum around Europe or the world. For example, USA, Trump won against. He said something like he wants to get the men out of the prisons and so on, so on, no corporations on children. So maybe you're getting the impression, oh, the Christian Democrats, so it's more like a conservative party. They won in Germany. Now it's maybe the end for gender ideology. But as you just saw, and in the coalition agreement, there's still a lot of language, a lot of not understanding what is going on. There's too much compromise. But I think even without being pushed by the other part, there is still not a real understanding what the actual problem is to get at it from the basis. In my experience, what we hear from also from the conservative parties or their representatives is like, this is a small group of people. Why do you care about this? It's okay, leave the children out. That's not so good. Okay, maybe men getting a wind shower. That's a bit creepy. No, we don't want that. That's not good. But there is no understanding how harmful this ideology is, and that there is actually no such unified group in the so-called Q, that these are completely different people. Of course, the people exist. They might believe what they believe, but this is not a group like the homosexual people or women or so on. And what we see here in this picture is a booth of the mayor candidate for the city of Munich. So Munich is the capital of the state of Bavaria, and there is in Bavaria there's the CSU party. So it's part of this CDU-CSU union, and that's the CSU is the Bavarian counterpart to the countrywide CDU. And you see the booth of this mayor candidate, Mr. Baumgärtner, covered in what? In progress flags. I don't know if there are Republican politicians or someone, I don't know if the Tories do this. I'm not involved so much in there, but maybe you can think about if you think of the more conservative parties in your country, will they be doing that? Will they present themselves like this? And at the same, by the way, at the same event, there are groups for like young sadomasochism, and they also advertise to it's young people, no, not little kids, but they mean like young. And so I don't know how you can be in a so-called conservative party and participate in an event that has both like this sadomasochism one. There was also a fetish area, like a area to celebrate fetish, and it is not hidden somewhere. It was in front of one of really large church, ironically, and in the city center. And also there was an area with a Lego booth that kind of celebrated all the colors of this progress flag. So for children to play with Lego. And it has this kind of progress flag colors, also including the trans color. And of course, we know what this means for children. So what I hear from the debates we have with women who are interestingly, from all different kinds of the political spectrum, women are coming together on this topic and talk with each other. They're like from the conservative side, they're radical feminists, they're super left, and they all don't like, of course, what is going on with women's rights and with children. And I hear lots of disillusionment with what CDU and CSU did, the Christian Democrats did. There were more hopes, and now I think, from what I'm hearing at least, there is some sort of resignation, or in concerns like we do not expect much from them anymore. It wasn't like there were big hopes before that, but at least some part of hope. But now it's unclear where it's going. It's good that there's at least some adjustment to this terrible, terrible law, but it doesn't take away that the law still exists, and it's still a danger for women and for children, and that it erases the freedom of speech, and for example, also for journalists and so on. So now there is a quite famous case of a neo-Nazi who has declared himself, like, by this law as a woman, and he is now suing, trying to his lawyers write apparently letters left and right, even to journalists and whoever calls him by his old name and so on. Ironically, our equivalent to the Pink News, it's called Queer.de. At some point they wrote, we do not recognize him, that he's a woman, or like that he's trans. It's funny that they can choose that if he's a neo-Nazi, but we cannot choose that if someone like that is in our spaces. We cannot say, oh, this is a man. Then we are the bad Nazis. But we don't care. We tell the truth. And I hope you could get something out of this. And let's see where everything is going. There is big madness, but maybe people are learning. So I think there's still some hope left, and we should not give up. Thank you. And this is just a little picture from our demonstration in Berlin on the 8th of March this year, with a very important message. So on this lighter
That's
note,
brilliant.
never
Thank you so much. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Thanks very much, and see you soon.
Thank you.